Good evening and namaste from Mumbai, India, where the Global Recruitment Collaborative Office is located. I want to thank, as I was just mentioning, our amazing team of Frenny, Chitra, Mario, and Christopher for all they do to connect schools with educators around the world every day of the year. Every day, the GRC is connecting people that are looking for jobs with schools that are looking for great educators. And also, I want to thank the team for dreaming up and then pulling off this, what has really evolved into an important and impactful webinar series. So, big round of applause. Let's snap. Let's clap for the GRC team. Thank you. It's a pleasure working with you four. Just the highlight of my day to have the meetings with the GRC team. So today is our fifth installment of what we envision to be an ongoing series throughout the year. The mission of the GRC, as some of you know, is recruitment simplified. We basically came together and we said, let's make recruitment in international schools simplified. And that's what we did for about 6 years. The GRC took out all the bells and whistles that were attached to sort of the system. We set it up as a free service, and then we just sort of watched it grow and watched it prosper. However, during this year's strategic planning process, and after 6 years of hosting online and face-to-face fairs, our data suggested that oftentimes, more than you would probably imagine, shockingly so, the stronger and better educator, whatever that means, didn't get the offer because they failed to understand the system of recruitment, and therefore they failed to put their best selves forward. This realization that great educators were missing out became sort of the impetus for this series. And it's all been so exciting and it's getting pretty popular. We're averaging about 300 viewers per week. So think about that. That's 300 educators that are taking an hour of their week to learn and reflect on the key component of their growth and development. Recruitment, successful recruitment, is the bridge from what you're doing and where you are to where you want to go and what you want to do next. So, like I said, it's very exciting. Over the past few months, we have had international leaders speak on how to stand out in a pandemic market, aligning your values and expectations in the hunt for your next job, how to master the paperwork, how to actually have a great interview, what it looks like to look inside the reference checking process. We've shared, actually, heads of schools sharing the reference checking process for educators to understand what that means. And we've also addressed the issue of your digital footprint and how that impacts your brand as a candidate. That's what we've done for the last 5 or 6 times. Upcoming topics for those of you that are returning or might want to return again. Here are some of the upcoming webinars. Stay at home until the vaccine and work for several schools at the same time. That's an interesting possibility. The 101 of how to build your own consultancy of teachers. Use social media to put yourself on every recruiter's radar. The 4th one is a discussion forum on how the world of international recruitment can enhance its commitment to equity and diversity. And the last one we have scheduled right now is your first 100 days in the new job. That's going to be a panel of heads of schools sharing successes and failures of incoming new educators. Okay, for tonight, Derrick Vignes is our webinar speaker. Derrick really knows the world of education, especially international education, really well. He has spent the last 3 decades as a teacher, coach, athletic director, an instructional coach, a principal in Canada, Trinidad and Tobago, Brazil, with me, the United Arab Emirates. Currently, he's at Ridley College in Ontario. Today, Derrick is going to share with us how to be relevant in a competitive market. So, about an hour ago, I went into Derrick's Twitter account to see what has Mr. Vignes been tweeting about lately. Sort of scouting out, looking at his digital footprint. And this is what Derrick's last couple tweets have been, just to give you a sense of what he's thinking about and what he finds worth sharing. The qualities of an effective coach, spectrums of empathy, the high jump competition at a Kenyan high school, comments on the Chicago Bulls' last dance, excerpts from Harvard School's leadership series, making students safe with communication, consistency, and control. And lastly, he tweeted about perfection is dangerous. So I just want to share a short story about Derrick because it's about being relevant. Of the thousands of colleagues I've worked with over my career, Derrick Vignes is at the very top of that list for a lot of reasons. But before I turn it over to him, I just have to share this story because it moves smoothly into relevancy. I had just accepted my first headship at the American School of Brasilia, and we were already on campus getting ready for the students to arrive. My job prior to being a head of school was being a high school principal, and Derrick was my high school principal. So a couple of times a day, I would go and kind of find myself wandering into his office and say, "Hey, Derrick, well, what's up? What are you working on?" And he'd say athletic rotation or advisory groupings, or I'm working on the calendar for assemblies. And several times he would say the schedule. And I would say something like, "Show me where you are. Maybe I can add some value." And then I'd kind of go in there and work with him. And then I'd wander off and do some head of school stuff. And then suddenly I'd find myself back in Derrick's office because I just enjoyed working with him and working on that stuff. After a few days of this, I came in and Derrick said, "Craig, have a seat." And he looked at his new head of school. We'd only been working together for like a week. And he said, "Man, you really know the stuff of being a high school principal really well. And you've added tremendous value to my thinking. And our final products are going to be better because of you. But you are not a high school principal anymore. You are the head of school. You need to figure out your job. You need to do what is relevant for a head of school to do. Now leave my office, go to your office, and be relevant." And with that, Mr. Vignes, over to you.
Thank you, Craig. It's a real pleasure to be here to be able to speak with you today about something that has pretty much taken over my life in many ways, and for the positive. Just a quick story about myself, and that being overseas and teaching for 20 years in a number of different schools and a number of different jobs, I've had to be in a position where I've had to reimagine myself and be able to find ways that I can make myself relevant in those communities doing different things. And in coming back to Canada, for some very personal reasons, I had to put myself in a situation where I wasn't necessarily a principal, but I was taking on a different role. Some would say maybe a subordinate role, maybe as a dean of students. But this opportunity really forced me to look at myself and figure out what is the type of impact that I could have at that role, and what is it that's important to me and of value to me. So when the opportunity came to start up an instructional coaching program, it was an opportunity for something that I hadn't done, and it was an opportunity to create the type of person that I wanted to become. I wanted to become exceptional at coaching and developing people. And this is something that has made me even more relevant today in our current world with all that is going on. The need for coaching and the need for direction becomes even more significant. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you some ideas that I have, some things that I've done, some things that I'm thinking of doing that will help you become more aware of your sense of relevance and your own sense of purpose, so you can be more effective in the job market or in the classroom or even in your personal life. So with that being said, when we looked at the definition of relevance, okay, by Oxford, a couple of things came into place. This idea of talking about what is going on in our world today. What are the things that we are talking about that matters? And what is happening in our world right now that matters, that we need to be more conscious of, that we need to figure out, well, what role do I have in being able to be a part of this international, national, or community conversation? What is the relationships that I need to think about and people I need to connect with to be able to move forward on this journey of being current, being involved, and being future thinking? What are some of the things that are going on in my environment? So it's not just about people, it's about our environment. What are some of the things that we're talking about in our environment that really matter? And how can I be useful? What are the character strengths or the traits that I have that will allow me to add and be impactful, to be useful to other people, all right? So the lives of all the people that I engage in and interact with become meaningful, become relevant. So today, very briefly, the two objectives I want to be able to set out are that you are now in a better place to identify your sense of relevance and how you can prepare to celebrate the value you can add to a prospective employer. And I'm going to come back and talk about this idea of celebrate during the job interview process, because it's very different from maybe the conventional way that many people would view the job interview process. And the other part is by asking you a series of questions that is hopefully going to uncover your uniqueness as an educator from a position of strength. You know, as people of color, we sometimes see that as a form of interference in our process and being able to move forward. But there are many opportunities that come from being a person of color and or not. And what the thing is we need to figure out what our unique strengths are wherever we may be on that spectrum in terms of how we can contribute to that community. So let's start with this premise. I do not have a secret bullet, all right? There is no secret bullet for success. It is very, very subjective, and a lot of it is depend on your circumstances, your unique circumstances, and what works best for you, what is relevant to you. So I am hoping that even though what I feel is important for me today, you may not find that important, and that is okay. It's okay, because what we need to do is we need to be able to speak from our own respective hearts and our own respective souls and our passions and what drives us. So it is my hope that some of the things that I'm going to say, you probably already know, and you're able to validate that. And I think the beauty of validation sometimes is giving you that sense of peace, knowing that you're on the right track. I'm doing the right thing. So sometimes conferences and presentations are about new and exciting ideas, which is fantastic. But validating the things that you already know to become true are equally important in allowing you to be able to move forward. And then finally, this is something that we all know, right? So what my hope is that you're able to pick apart, all right, some of these ideas that I want to share with you and figure out what is that one thing that Derrick talked about that I can use that is going to give me that extra advantage, that's going to help me perform at a higher level and being able to put my best self forward. So Craig, feel free to jump in anytime as I'm going through this.
Yep.
So when we talk about this concept of relevance, we in many ways equate it to value. And I would argue that even though value is incredibly important, value speaks to us on a very emotional level. All right? It talks about how we are able to support people on a very emotional level, while at the same time in very pragmatic ways. But relevance is much more direct. It's much more focused. It's much more user-friendly. It's much more pragmatic than the idea of value. So even though it may be a play on words, I think words matter. And if we are able to put the way we think and the way we speak with intention in the type of words we use, it helps us set ourselves up to be more focused and intentional in what we are trying to achieve. So what I want us to think about today is what makes you relevant as an educator, not just to compete, because we don't want to compete. We want to be able to exceed. We want to be able to do better than everybody else. So what is it about you that makes you relevant in a situation where you can exceed the expectations and go further than everybody else does? Because that is what's going to make the difference. So part of it is that we have to redesign the way we think. The way job interviews and the way teaching has been 5, 6, 7 months ago is not the way it's going to be in the next 2 months in September when school starts open. So we need to redesign the way we think. Just the way we redesign the way we think in the classroom, we need to redesign the way we think in presenting ourselves to prospective employers to ensure that we have that extra edge or that we're able to perform at the highest level. Because interviews are about performance. in many ways. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but think about how you would redesign the way you present yourself, because what you did last year may not work this year because so much has changed in that time. So what I'm going to give you is some thought pieces about what that means to redesign the way we think for relevance. So the first thing I like to share is that traditionally when we would go to job interviews, we would think of it as a place where I need to go and impress upon somebody the things that I do and the things that I do really well, right? And sometimes that creates a sense of anxiety, a sense of nervousness, a sense of frustration, and we are not able to perform at our best. So what if we changed our focus from the interview to a celebration of yourself, right? Because now you are in complete control. Everybody loves to talk about the things that they do really well. The challenge is to be able to do it with humility. So if I attend, or if any of us view a job interview as a way of showcasing or celebrating with all the wonderful things that we have done, all the current learning that has been going on, we are in a much better position to perform at our best because we are just focusing on what we can control, which is us. I can't control whether a school offers me a job or not, right? I can only control on how I perform and how I sell my best self. So at least in the end, I feel very good about this experience as a learning experience for me. And if anything comes out of it, if no job comes out of it, I come out of it as a much more confident, competent, high-performing person. So that next person I meet, I am now in a better position to share my best self. When I asked this question to a colleague of mine earlier, how can you be relevant, promote your best self, and maintain your humility? And a good friend of mine, Barry, said, well, you focus on your strengths and your growth experiences. So when you are celebrating yourself, it's not about all the stuff you have on the paper, right? It's what you've done off the paper, all right? How have you used your strengths to grow? And talk about your learning experience from that. Because I suspect heads of school are very future oriented. They're not so much concerned of what you've done in the past, which is nice. They want to know where you are going. So giving them a roadmap to where you're going, why you're going there, why it's important to you is going to give indications to the heads of school of your growth mindset and how you can become relevant in their respective communities. So the question that I have to ask you is take 30 seconds and think about, in the last 4 months, in what ways have you grown or learned? What have you been done different? What discomfort have you felt that has allowed you to grow and develop and learn in the last 4 months? This opportunity to reflect I think is also critical, because many times during these types of conferences or webinars, there isn't that pause. And I think in that pause is very, very important. So I'm going to shut up for a little bit, about 30 seconds, and I want you to think about how have you grown and what have you learned in the last 4 months? So what we all have is we all have a reference point now for us so when I'm talking about some suggestions or ideas, we have a point of reference in which we can draw on to think about what we might say or what we might do moving forward. So two key things that I would offer for your consideration is this idea of understanding the relationship between passion and purpose. And I love the quote by George Bernard Shaw when he talks about this idea is we're not looking to find ourselves, but we're looking to create ourselves. The idea of creating ourselves every day suggests that we are finding ways to be integrated and relevant in what is happening today, not thinking about what has happened in the past or where I've been in the past. Even though the past can be very valuable, looking forward, I think gives us a better indication of who we want to be. So when we talk about a passion, it's about investigating what is important to me right now, professionally speaking. And hopefully that will in many ways align with what is going on in your personal life. So earlier I flashed on some ideas with regards to Black Lives Matter, diversity, compassion. the pandemic. What is it about what we are talking about right now is important to you, right? And if you're able to identify what is important to you right now, the next question is, who do you want to become? I know what's important to me. Great. So what is the type of person that I want to become in the future? What is the type of impact that I want to be able to leave on other people? What is that cause I am going to be fighting or supporting for? Now, in education, there are so many things that we can be experts in and that we can focus in on. But I think what really matters is how you can take your best you and the strengths and the passion and the purpose that you have and align it with the mission of the school that you are maybe seeking employment with. There are many schools, if you look at the mission statement, will use the words diversity, love of learning, compassion, collaboration. All right. And these are all schools that are speaking to this idea that they are looking to create a community that is forward thinking and that is relevant in what is going on today and not being stuck in the past. And I think one of the things, for example, that has been a big shift in education is many of these universities in the United States are now going away from SATs, right? The SAT is no longer going to be a reference point for many schools to get into university. So how does that change what we do in schools? Do we need to spend that time for SAT preps? And do we need to spend that time for testing? Or can we now interject something else into those time slots that are much more meaningful and much more relevant and much more purposeful to what the students are going to find useful to them? So I would suggest to keep in mind of these two ideas and how they link together to form this idea of what is important and what is relevant today. Let me share with you a brief story. I recall many years back while in Brazil, there was a young man who academically was challenged. It was being challenged, and as a result, behaviors became disruptive in some ways. And trying to figure out how to get to this particular young man was something that I kept thinking about. And how am I going to connect with this person in a way that is meaningful and relevant to him to be able to adjust or to be able to change these behaviors? So knowing this young man as I do and knowing myself, I figure maybe there's another way to connect with this person on a different level other than just traditional discipline models. So the idea of taking this person and going out for a 10K run is an idea that I thought about probably the day before I did it, only thinking that this would give him and me an opportunity to talk in a very informal manner, while at the same time focusing on the running, the environment, and at times the time ourselves in terms of why am I doing this? Why am I out running? And as time goes on, I think this is something that has been a turning point in my life because it helped me really solidify the importance of going outside your comfort zone and finding something that is going to be meaningful and relevant to you to be able to put forward. And this is the story I sometimes tell in my process about something that has changed me and how it's had an impact on somebody else. And I think even today, that young man still thinks about this as much as I do, as a way of how it has changed the way we view things. And moving forward in this direction is something that we want to continue to be able to do. Then the next thing is, where do I need to go? You've already unpacked your sense of who you are and what's important for you. So the next question is, where do I need to go to flourish? Where do I need to go to be the best me? So this is where your homework comes in significantly, because now you need to figure out, where are you going to fit? Where is the right fit for you, where you can flourish based on what your passion and what your purpose and what your needs are? To establish your relevance is a couple things that I'd like you to think about. And the one thing is this question that comes up. Tell me about yourself. This is a question that is really a Pandora's box in many ways, because it invites other people's into your true you, your who, what you are all about as an individual, not what is on your resume. So if you are able to effectively answer this question, all right, it gives the employer some really good insights into who you are and what your capabilities and your passions and interests are, and be able to connect with what the needs of the school are to be able to move forward. So what I have is I have 6 questions to offer you that will hopefully ignite some thinking on your part to get a better understanding of what's important to you, why you are doing what you are doing, and how this is going to help connect with the potential school that you are looking to become a part of. So, vision. We ought to be mindful of where we want to go. And one of the ways that we are able to determine what our vision is becoming comfortable with this idea of who do I want to be? What is the type of person I want to become? If I was going to be described by somebody, what would I want them to say? So once you've identified the characteristics of this vision, then you begin to work towards it. Then you begin to develop your capacities so that you are able to achieve your vision. You may never get there, but it's that process of working towards it that becomes incredibly invaluable. So vision becomes extremely important in terms of being able to tell me about yourself. The next thing is developing your sense of awareness. Where do I need to go? Where is the best place for me to be able to achieve my vision? Now, people would have different priorities in terms of deciding where they want to go, right? But if your experience is going to be meaningful and relevant for you, your vision and your awareness of where you can achieve that vision becomes increasingly important, right? If your vision is to be more competent and comfortable and more dynamic with technology, your sense of awareness of where you need to go to be able to do that becomes incredibly important, because the fallback of that is maybe slipping back into mediocrity. So you want to think about a place where you can go that you can be continued to be challenged. Passion, all right? What do you care about and what makes you happy? There's an incredible amount of research that exists right now in positive psychology and positive education that revolves around this concept of happiness. If we are happy about what we care about, then our passion is going to be able to lead us towards our vision. So again, ideally, if you can align your passion and your purpose together with your personal life and your professional life, this allows you to have greater focus and meaning of what you are doing moving forward. Achievement. Being able to pat yourself on the back in a manner that is humble becomes significantly important, because that may be the only way that people know what we're capable of doing. So being able to express what you are most proud of becomes incredibly important. And talking about your successes and your learning and where you are going to go from there are all indicators of the type of person that you want to become. Your values. When we talk about integrity, we're talking about, in many ways, what's important to us in terms of our values, right? Many times we have to make ethical decisions, and those ethical decisions are driven by our sense of value. So I would suggest that if we have a core sense of non-negotiable values that hold us true to who we are, that will allow us to be able to be more consistent in the type of decisions that we are going to make. And through consistency with the types of decisions that are based on values, will ensure that our integrity, which is something that we all want to be able to act with, is consistent in the eyes of other people. So as we're going down, I'm hoping that you maybe are able to see a bit of a pattern of a couple things that one thing that keeps popping up. The last thing is failing forward. It speaks to this idea of resilience and innovation. So what you're noticing here is that this process of question asking, self-questions, becomes incredibly important for you to be able to celebrate vision, awareness, passion, achievement, integrity, and resilience and innovation. These are all key characteristics or traits that schools are looking for moving forward. All schools have a vision and they want people who are visionary. All schools want people who are aware of their immediate surroundings and know what's going on, be it in their environment or with themselves personally, and being able to make relevant connections. They want people who are passionate. They want people who have goals and aspirations and want to achieve success in many different ways. They want people with integrity. They want people with character. And they want people more now than ever who are resilient and who can be innovative. So as you are preparing for your process, these are key questions that you can ask yourself and be prepared to share when you were asked that question. So, tell me about yourself. Because what you see here in 1 to 6 is not what is going to appear on the resume. This is the part you need to celebrate and sell to yourself. This, in many ways, is how you become relevant. So as we continue to think about that, now that we've kind of established our sense of relevance, right, and what is important to us, all right, what we need to do is think about how do you exceed those expectations that are laid out for you. We all are able to understand that in many ways we meet the expectations of the schools that we're looking to move towards. And the big question is not about meeting, but exceeding. So as you look at that job description and what they're expecting, I would encourage people to reflect on and think about identifying things that they do that exceed the expectations based on the particular vision of the school. What can you do to push that school further based on your strengths, your experiences, and your unique qualities and experiences, right? That is what I believe people are looking for. So here's where I want to go. So we now talked about this idea of self-questioning and trying to figure out how we can present our best self forward in a presentation or in a interview, and what that means and what that looks like, and the types of things that we can say that are going to set us up for success. But I would like to drop this little nugget for you, and hopefully it'll be relevant to you in your own particular way. A gentleman named Tim Galloway in the 1970s wrote this book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And he was a tennis pro who was teaching players who wanted to become tennis pros, or better, just simply better tennis players. So over time, he had developed these ideas and these practices that basically came together with this concept of performance is equal to potential minus interference. And as I said earlier, the job interview is in fact a performance. It's a celebration of what you have done and where you're going and what you're able to achieve in that particular sense, in a matter that is relevant for you, in a matter that is relevant for the school. So the idea that if we want to perform at the highest level, right, and achieve our objectives, we need to be able to maximize our potential. But the only way we can maximize potential if we are able to identify and eliminate the barriers or blockades that get in our way. Many times we are aware of them, but we do very little to eliminate them. Therefore, not being able to reach our full potential. So when we now are talking about relevance in the job fair and looking for employment, the question is, if I'm going to put my best self forward and sell myself, all right, I need to be at my best. So what are the things that may get in my way of performing at my best? And many times it's self-doubt or fear. So to eliminate that self-doubt and fear is this idea of focusing on yourself and looking at how you can celebrate your best self and what you want to do where you want to be, and how you are going to do it. So if you are struggling with your performance or struggling to be able to get to your potential, ask yourself the question, what is it that is interfering with my potential that is limiting or slowing down my performance? Does anybody have any questions at this point? I've been doing a lot of talking. I'm just curious if anybody has any questions or thoughts.
Hi, Derrick. We have some questions that have been submitted.
Okay.
Do schools actually know where they want to be and the type of school they want to become post-COVID? Is this affecting the recruiting process?
Yeah. I think one of the first things is to examine the mission, the vision, and the values of the school. Because that's the beginning point of figuring out where they are, what their current reality is, and where they want to go. And when having conversations or when preparing to have conversations is using their mission statement to formulate questions that are going to help you uncover what their reality is and how genuine they are with that particular mission or vision or those values. So use what they have presented as themselves. Figure out where you lie or where your strengths exist within their framework, and ask really, really good questions that will determine how genuine they are with meeting their vision. If they are a school that is talking about diversity and celebrating diversity, all right, asking questions about, well, what does diversity look like in your school? And sharing information as to, this is how I can promote diversity in your school. This is how I can advance diversity in your school, I believe are things that schools are looking for. So even though they may not be doing what they say they are doing, put yourself in a position where you can help them do what they say they want to do. And I think many forward-thinking school heads and leaders are looking for people who are able to ask those questions that are unique and different, that is going to have them really think about where they are and where they want to go.
We have one more question. Looking at number 5,
Yep.
where would you place in this list the process of exploring and considering one's identity as a foundation for the work ahead?
Yeah. If we are able to identify who we are and what is important to us, we are in a much better position to tell people where we want to go. So that foundation of what are my values, what is my purpose, what is important to me. If we have a clear understanding of what those things are, then we're in a better place to communicate how we can help people move forward and get to where they want to be. I think these questions are designed to give people that sense of foundation so they have talking points about themselves and being able to move forward. But the values that we have and the values that we live by become kind of our moral compass. They hold us accountable to what we say we are going to do. And that becomes very foundational. That allows us to ensure that we are genuine when we are speaking to people about who we are. So again, identifying 2 or 3 values that are non-negotiable for you and what's important to you will ensure that you continue to be genuine with who you are, and that the foundation that you now lay for the decisions that you're going to make, and many of them will be ethical decisions as well, will allow you to maintain your authenticity, your sense of genuineness, your own integrity. So that's how I see the connection between values, foundation, and integrity kind of lining up.
And one more, Derrick. What do you mean by failed forward? Could you provide an example, please?
Yes. This idea of, if I could digress very briefly, this idea of failure has become a real taboo, especially in some cultures where failure is not an option. And many people much smarter than me have believed that the only way, if we don't fail, then we're not moving ahead. We're not moving forward because we're not challenging ourselves. We're not doing anything different. We're not getting outside the box. And I think what people want to know is, how creative are you and looking for new ways to do things differently. And to be able to really understand what that means is you're going to have to go through tests and experimentation and trials, and more than likely fail. Because if it is being successful all the time, then there has been no real challenge. You haven't really pushed yourself. So sometimes failing, reflecting on their failure, is another way or a means of continuing to move forward and developing something that's new and something that is different. So what comes out of our failure? Well, I've learned that there's some things that I have to do different, right? Let me see if I can, if an example, if I want to become a really good basketball player, and one of the things that I need to do is I need to kind of work on my ball handling to become a better ball handler and passer. Well, I am going to have to put myself through some really, really challenging exercises and drills to be able to do that. And I'm going to be uncomfortable. And if I'm failing, it's going to force me to become more resilient and have more perseverance to be able to move forward so I can get past that discomfort. And in doing that, I may have to create new ideas or new ways to be able to do it, to be able to meet that expectation. And one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King is that without failure, without disruption, there is no progress. So when I talk about failing forward, I'm talking about using your creativity, all right, and your passion to look at new ways to do things differently. And through that process, there are going to be bumps. But being able to fail and fail forward and learn from those experiences is going to demonstrate to the heads of school or the people that you're interviewing with that you are resilient because you have experienced failure, that you are innovative because you have grown from that failure, and that you are in a position, because we all want our students to be risk takers. So having been a risk taker yourself, you're now able to better model that for your students in the classroom moving forward. Okay?
So now we can go on.
All
Yeah.
right. So I just have a couple more things, maybe one or two more slides to share. So this is kind of a quick review, is that we've talked about the idea of relevance and what that means and being able to fulfill our passion and purpose and how the two intersect. And if we're able to identify who I want to become, what's important to me, and where do I need to flourish, these are all components that are, when brought together, put us in a situation where we can put our best step forward and demonstrate to the people why we can add value or how we can add value or how we are relevant today and for tomorrow. I also talked about this idea of performance, potential, and interference, and trying to determine or understand that if we want to be able to truly perform at our highest level, then we have to be able to understand what are the things that are getting our way and to eliminate those or minimize those as much as possible. To be able to exceed the expectations, not just to meet them. And probably more importantly is to celebrate ourselves and be able to celebrate ourselves with humility. Because nobody likes to hear people talking about themselves in a very braggadocious way. So how do we celebrate ourselves? How do we share the things, the wonderful things that we've done with humility? Focus on your strengths and focus on your learning. And by doing that, you are going to heighten your own profile as a person that is going to show that you can be a person of change in that particular school community. In the end, we want to leave with a wow factor. What is the impression, or how can we leave a lasting impression on the head of school as they have more people coming in that are trying to do the same thing that you're doing? And this is no different than what great writers do to try and hook their audience, all right, to continue reading the book. So let me just share maybe 3 things that you want to be able to be mindful of in that interview so that when you leave, people will still be thinking about you. I think the first thing is you want to make people care about your story, right? Tell them a story that is authentic, that is relevant, and that will be memorable, right? This may be one of the most important ways to leave an impression on somebody. If you can be authentic, relevant, and memorable in a story that you can tell about something that you have done that has advanced your learning, your growth, and the experience and learning of others. Be focused and actionable with specific examples. The right time for the right person. Timing is everything. I would suggest that you take an incredible amount of time to research not only the schools, but the people that are interviewing you. Understanding what their passions are, what their purpose is, the things that they've done, the things that they've written about, what makes them happy. So when you're speaking to them, you are able to speak to them on a level that you can connect with them on. That will allow your story to be memorable. And then finally, Maya Angelou says it a lot better than I could ever say it. But if you can evoke some emotion, some form of positive emotion in your interaction with the people that you are meeting with, this is in part what's going to separate you or could separate you from the rest. So make a story, make your story powerful, make it authentic, give very, very clear examples. Be very focused in terms of what you're going to say and concise with your words. And look to generate a positive emotion that is going to carry with that person for the next couple of days until they have to make a decision. This is no different than what we do in the classrooms. This is what developing the capacity of others is all about, invoking emotion in them that is going to energize them to be able to move forward. So as I look to kind of wrap up, I want to convey a final note on this topic of purpose and passion. And that if you are able to reflect on you, your strengths, your uniqueness, what makes you different from others, then your sense of relevance will be something that will come to surface and be even more prevalent for the people who you are trying to impress. And if you can focus on the idea of how you add value to others first, and how you add value to yourself second, this idea of being a servant leader or a servant teacher or a servant to the development of others is something that will come naturally. And when we are talking about what comes naturally and what flows, we're talking about what it means to be relevant. So with that, are there any additional questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Derrick, Vignes, for taking the time and talking with our community and being relevant. Thank you for the participants for coming in this evening or morning, wherever you are. Please do check out the GRC website. We will post this on the website, and any updates from the GRC will be posted on the website.
Okay. Well, thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Namaste, and have a great evening, day, afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Derrick.